Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Tropics Talk. Gulf Coast meteorologist Jim Dickey back with you here on the 16th of September. We're now through the first half of September, and remarkably, something I've not been able to say in the 11 years I've been down here in Southwest Florida, no name storms have formed so far this month. Remarkable considering September tends to be the most active month during hurricane season, especially those first 2 weeks. But yes, stormless still out there. We're on 19 straight days without a named storm in the Atlantic. Once again, I forgot to grab my clicker before we began, but we're good now. Take a look out across the Atlantic, and I do not think this stormless streak is going to continue for much longer, as now there are two areas we're watching for potential development, two areas marked for potential development by the Hurricane Center, both of which are in the eastern side of the basin. Not tough to pick out the first one. This is Invest 92L, a large, very large area of thunderstorm activity, of disturbed weather, as we say. A broad low pressure area that's moving to the west and northwest, and then another wave emerging off of Africa here as we speak. That is also now marked for development. Let's begin with that one to sort of get it out of the way. 20% development chance with this. The signal in the models for development not very strong here this morning, as I think what's going on here with the models is this runs westward and sort of runs into some increased wind shear on the backside of the much larger 92L, which should help to keep a lid on that. Besides that, there's still lots of dry air out there in the central Atlantic. It is going to eventually encounter that trough that's been out there that will likely tear it apart before it gets to the Caribbean. But it is September, even as it's been very quiet, so we keep an eye on all of these waves that come off of Africa. Again, 20% development chance, and we have about a week before this even gets close to the Caribbean, so a long time to watch that one. Of more immediate concern, not necessarily concern for any land areas, but concern for potential development, is this very large system that right now is about at the halfway point between the coast of Africa and the eastern side of the Caribbean. Now, as it is so large, that's going to sort of work against it in the near term, because as I see this here, actually let me go back and loop back to this. As I look at the satellite presentation, there are a number of little areas of spin within it that will have to sort of coalesce for this to come together. There's one right about there. I see another little area of circulation right about there, perhaps even another right about there. So it's going to have to sort of resolve that, coalesce itself around one of those circulation centers. Once that occurs, that is when this will become a tropical depression and tropical storm. The Hurricane Center fairly bullish on those development chances now, up to a 90% chance in the next 2 days. In the next 7 days, yeah, basically saying this will become a tropical depression before long, if not right to tropical storm. Next name on the list, we've been waiting for this one for a while, Gabrielle. This likely does take the name Gabrielle off of the list. You can see the path is expected to take, marked in red, staying north, thankfully north of the Caribbean. This is no immediate threat to any land areas. These systems in the East Atlantic always have to check the status of that Bermuda Azores high. This is showing you surface pressure in blue, high pressure in red, low pressure. High pressure steers these storms in the eastern side of the basin. They ride the fringes of that Atlantic ridge. Right now it is stretched out towards Bermuda, but fairly weak and centered close to Europe. So with that northerly positioning to it and a weakness in that ridge, that allows this to turn to the north. Basically nothing holding it back from moving northward as it wants to do going into the weekend. So by the time we get to Saturday, this is already well to the north and east of the Caribbean, of the Leeward Islands, continues to track north from there. We'll be watching this into the next week for Bermuda, but all indications are this will stay well to the east of Florida and the United States and is not a U.S. threat. Of course, until something actually forms, tough to put full faith into what the models are showing, but there's very strong agreement right now. Every model you look at, while there is quite a bit of spread, shows this staying well north of the Caribbean, shows this staying well to the east of the U.S. If this was going to be any type of U.S., Caribbean, or Bahamian threat, you would see a few of these lines at the very least going in a more westerly direction. No, not in the cards, but that weak high pressure that is able to stay to the north and recurve. Again, Bermuda, little close for comfort as we go into next week. But yes, not a threat to Florida going forward with that one. Okay, next name on the list is Gabrielle. After that, Umberto. Interesting note, as I record this here on the 16th of September, today is the average date that the I storm forms. We have a long history with the I storm here along the Gulf Coast, particularly here in Southwest Florida. Ian and Irma come to mind. The I storm is actually the one that has been retired most often of any of the other letters of the alphabet on each year's list. But again, we're behind schedule now. So today, the average date for the I storm means we're about 3 storms behind what would be a typical year. So 3 storms behind the pace to even get to 14, which would be average. So we'll have to sort of turn up the pace if we're even going to get back to average, let alone get to any of those lofty forecasts that were put out preseason calling for an above active year. But, when it comes down to it, as we saw going back to 2022, when we only had 15 named storms form, it only takes 1 to make it a bad season for us. And of course, hurricane season continues all the way through the end of November, and things tend to stay active, particularly for our purposes in Florida, through at the very least mid-October. So still plenty more to go. Anything out there, we'll be tracking it for you. Again, while we're not seeing any immediate threats to land, be sure to keep one eye on the forecast here. We'll let you know of any changes going forward here at Gulf Coast Weather. Until next time, meteorologist Jim Dickey, have a great day.